Shalom. So today I want to share with you one of my favorite Hasidic stories, the story of Reb Yitzchak, the son of Reb Yechiel, who suffers from terrible poverty for years but never loses his faith in God, and then suddenly begins to have the same dream over and over again, night after night, a dream about a treasure beneath a bridge found in the city of Prague, which is far, far away from his home in Krakow, in Poland. And so finally he gives into the dream and decides to set out for Prague, and he gets there and he finds the bridge, and he walks around the bridge day and night trying to think of what he would do were he able to dig beneath the bridge, which he can't do because there's a guard guarding the bridge, because the bridge leads to the palace of the king. Eventually the guard approaches him and says, "Tell me, can I help you? Is there anything you need? Is there someone you're supposed to meet? I see you here day after day." And Rabbi Yitzchak tells him the story of the dream. At which point the guard laughs at him and says, "You wore out your shoes because of a dream. If I believed in dreams, I would make a journey all the way to the city of Krakow, and there I would look for a Jew by the name of Yitzchak, the son of Yechiel, and I would go into his kitchen and dig beneath his stove, because I've had a dream 100 times that beneath that stove there's a buried treasure just waiting to be dug up. But of course, how am I going to get to Krakow? And I bet half the city is named Yitzchak, and the other half of the city is Yechiel." And he laughs again and walks away. And Yitzchak, the son of Yechiel, bows to him as he departs, and he heads home, where of course he finds the treasure buried beneath his own stove. I love this story because it teaches a lesson that when we set out on journeys, when we are looking for something important and valuable, perhaps we should start our search at home. And when I think about the many people I know who are involved in spiritual searches and other searches for meaning, searches for God, I think that I was blessed that in the course of my search, my efforts to understand God and what was important, I more or less found my treasure beneath the stove in my kitchen. It happened when I was a rabbinical student and I was wrestling with what it is that I do and do not believe in. And I was given an article entitled "Some Postulates of Biblical Criminal Law," written by Professor Moshe Greenberg of the Hebrew University. A typical, what I thought would be very dry, scholarly article. But in the course of the article, where Professor Greenberg cites the research in biblical scholarship of the late 19th century, much of which had an anti-Semitic agenda, and mentions the comparisons made by scholars between the Torah and the Code of Hammurabi and other ancient Near Eastern law codes that were contemporaneous to the Torah, and the comparison in particular of laws that are found in this week's parasha, Parshat Mishpatim. He cites example of the goring ox and how the Torah teaches that an ox that gores and the owner is warned, and that despite that the ox gores and kills again, the owner's life is forfeit, as opposed to the other law codes that simply require financial compensation for the families of those who were killed. And how these scholars and theologians came to the conclusion that this proves that the Torah is archaic, if not barbaric. But Greenberg completed the comparison, which they didn't do, and shows that in other cases, where there's damage not to human life, but to property, that the other law codes require capital punishment and the Torah requires financial compensation, showing that in the biblical tradition the premium is put on human life and not on property. And that to me was not only a valuable lesson, but a sign that the role of the Torah is to take us even one step beyond those law codes that were considered so important, like the Code of Hammurabi, in the development of modern law, and realize that we have to move in a direction of humanizing the law so that we will hold the value of human life as sacred at the core of all of our other values and at the core of our legal systems. Nothing is more sacred than the human being, because as the Torah taught, human beings were created in the image of God. My search for understanding God at that moment exploded in a sense of euphoria that here, this modern scholarship of Professor Greenberg's had led me to a conclusion that I could not have found otherwise. Instead of detracting from the possible divinity of the Torah, I found God's thumbprint. I came to the conclusion that God is probably much more involved, if not totally involved, in the writing of the Torah than any of the modern scholars would care to believe. That, for me, was the treasure that I found beneath my stove. And I was grateful that through study and participation and discussion of our biblical sources, as well as the commentaries of scholars of later generations, I was able to arrive at that point where I realized that this is what the Torah, this is what Judaism is all about. Sanctifying the value of the sacredness of human life is the guiding principle for everything that we have to do. I was very fortunate to be a student of Professor Greenberg's in later years. I was very proud when he won the Israel Prize during the time that I was his student. And I commend to you reading any of his writings that are available in English or in Hebrew in order to continue to deepen our understanding of God, of Torah, in what our obligations are as Jews. I don't know if that's what scholars set out to do, but at least in this case, that's what Professor Greenberg did for me. And I'm sure that through study and involvement in Jewish life, we are bound to find many treasures buried beneath the stoves in our kitchens. Shabbat Shalom.
Begin it